travel for a month and come back. And he has, from his house, he has a great view of Mountain Helens.
What part of America would you describe this as? Washington State, maybe? But this side en route to Madrid looks like solid olive trees almost as far as the horizon, unless those are forests over there way in it. This is Plaza Major in Madrid. I've just arrived about an hour or so ago. Came to TI to get a good map that I could actually read, kinda. And apparently they had some kind of a celebration here today because the place is covered with confetti stuff. Here's the cathedral. And right next to it, the Royal Palace, I believe. Looking from this vantage point, spectacular. But for the distance that it goes to the left there, it also goes at least that to the right. No telling how long this party will go on. Night shot over part of the Royal Palace, but not the big part. This is my hostel, the meeting point. It's a nice enough place. It's become tawdry. The carpets are old and dirty. And it's got a manager, one man out of three managers speaks no English, which is tantamount to useless. No stove, but it's a place to stay. Now we're going to go up this alley and go back to find Puerto de Sol so I'll walk up there this morning and then begin Rick Steve's walking tour. So just walking down to Plaza de Sol, I ate an apple, so I thought that would be a good way to start the day, but this is what I'm confronted with, and this is not the only one. There are several along. I haven't even had the courage to go inside and see what's fresh. The aroma here is dazzling. This is the third window, the fourth and last window, thank God. So I'm in the middle of Puerto de Sol Plaza, and this is King Carlos III, who is memorialized here and celebrated for all of his enlightened social policies back in the 18th century, late 18th century. He embellished the city with fountains, removed the meddlesome Jesuits, established a public school system and a public sewer system. Even though today those two are related, they weren't then necessarily. Turned his Retiro Park, which had been private, public. The Prado Museum, and built one incredible royal palace. Has moved us forward to the higher part, uphill slightly, to this statue of a bear pawing at the tree and munching on the tree. This has been a symbol of Madrid since the medieval period. From this point, I'll give you a pan of the square just so you can orientate as I show more things. This is the train station entrance, what's called the glass fish entrance. And next to it, the metro station, which is now named Vodafone Plaza, not Puerto de Sol. So when you think you're looking for Puerto de Sol in all the literature on the metro station, you're not going to find that station. You have to know. So this used to be the post office in 1760, mandated by Charles III, and it's now the governor's offices. But it's notorious for once having been Franco's police department headquarters. And it's reputed that people used to escape through those upper balconies by throwing themselves off to their death. Another view of Charlie. The pigeon is gratis. Probably indicating a pecking order of some sort. Standing right in front of the governor's office is ground zero. In other words, this is the center, literally and figuratively, of Spain. Notice the six brass lines radiating out from the center. Those indicate the highway, six principal highways in Spain. To orient, straight ahead of us is the El Corte Inglés department store, which he calls huge, hardly huge. Actually, it may be this building here. I don't have a big sign, but I think that's it. Yeah, you can see it in green on the top of the second. Well, it includes that building there, apparently. So maybe it is huge. 1 o'clock starts the seedier Calle de Montera, a street with shady characters and prostitutes that leads, ironically, to the trendy pedestrianized Calle de Fuencarral. Construction of the largest Apple store in Europe. Can you believe that? Prado, about a mile farther on to the right. At 10 o'clock is Calle de Arenal Street, a pedestrianized street that leads to the Royal Palace and right where my hostel is. Standing in front of the palace, there are two plaques. One to the left that honors the people who died, or correction, the people who helped during the terrorist bombing earlier in 2004. And on the right, that memorializes the invasion on the square of Napoleon's troops, who, when protesters came out peacefully, his troops literally slaughtered them. This is the pastry I just showed you. It began in 1894, so frankly it would be, for historical reasons, almost immoral not to get something there sometime. So this is Rick's recommended pastry for which they are famous, although I suspect they're famous for many. The Napolitana, or something like that. Looks like cheese in a beautiful pastry. You can guess who I'm blaming for my eating. Incidentally, this is not cheese, although it looks like our ugly American cheese. That's a fresh one. But it's some kind of creamy thing. So this is the McDonald's, one of them. Nice, but not extravagant. Looks just like America. That's good. Now it's important to look at these old signs. Notice that has a post wagon and the horses, because in the medieval time people couldn't read. And this was how they knew whether they were on the right street or not. There's another street that has a street where you would buy armor, and somehow the sign reflects. This, again, absolutely littered with restaurants. This is Pan's and Company. Rick says, been known for its bocatellos, i.e. sandwiches. The restaurant across the street looks just as interesting, if that's the right. In this big cities, particularly in tourist areas like this, is like Asia, in the sense that there's such an awesome array of food available. Unfortunately, here it's a lot more expensive than elsewhere, probably in Spain. Now, as you can gather, we're about to enter into Plaza Major, which during the medieval times was the center of Madrid, if not Spain, and probably in some degree remains the same today for weddings, celebrations, demonstrations, although demonstrations take place at Puerto de Sol also. Now yesterday, as you'll see from the lack of cacophony of people, which was filled with weddings that had taken place during the day, that's what I thought was confetti. It's rice, I noticed as I ground my feet into it. But today on Sunday is the book and coin fair, if you will. This statue honors Philip III, whose relatively minor accomplishment, I would say, at this point, was to convert this from a medieval square into the Baroque square that we see today and yesterday. And it's noted here the uniformity of this square, giving it a beauty for that reason. The 3 stories, the balconies, etc., etc. Pointing out also the slate roofs, which look rather ordinary to our way of thinking because we're used to such colored asphalt tiles. But then these 2 towers, and he points out that it's the same on the other side behind me, and this is as though a large building that had a square inside of it were turned inside out. In other words, imagine this being the outside of a large building. Now, what I do find interesting, and that's why I'm focusing on it, is what this building is and why this artwork. And putting locks on it, on something, lovers do that. Saw it in China, where huge numbers, or it was at Eastern New York, huge numbers of locks were displayed. The square, particularly in medieval times and during the Inquisition, was the center of all kinds of things. In the Inquisition, it was the center of the executions. The people who had been decreed as heretics were brought to the square in parade, walked around to be exhibited to the people, who sometimes sat in bleachers if the crowds were sufficient, and then were burned alive. How do you do that? Did the people become so anesthetized to that horrific scene that they were like the kids who play video games and then go kill somebody? Because, well, what's the difference? Residential, ranging anywhere from 400,000 or 500,000 for one of those attic places where you see that little window, to several million. A lot more than just coins. There's bottle cap collectors. This looks more like a flea market. Some coins there. That dart gun, that would get you off the plane quickly enough. Like anything that's collected, whether it's the little religious tokens of Bangkok's markets, or coins, or watches, or jewelry, you have to be an expert. Not just in how they were made, but what their value is in the market. These 2 gentlemen probably know exactly what they're looking for, and they're looking for that unrecognized value amidst all of the wheat or hay in these stacks. Names of pins. The fool walks into these places and buys stuff without knowing what they're buying, or without buying it because they don't care about price and it's not expensive and they're just looking for the novelty of it. Some turn of the century, 20th century, i.e. 1901, that sort of thing. Storefronts that are original. And we exit left to the Mercado de San Miguel, a metal iron building that was set up for a market in the classic style of the either late 19th, early 20th. So picking up a little visual of the pretty building to the left of the market, let's look closely at the architecture and design of this Mercado. And just inside now, this 1916 market, which replaced an even earlier market. Much nicer to look at it this morning without the hordes that were in yesterday and will be today, later on. The vegetables and fruits will be very, almost Japanese-like in the sense of expensive, well displayed, probably top of the line. All kinds of ham. I noticed also on Calle Mayor that there was a museum of jamon. In other words, a ham museum. Here you can buy croquettes that you either eat straight or fry. I'm not sure what they do with these. These, of course, being a ham shop, will be based on ham, but oftentimes you get these as an hors d'oeuvre. or you can probably order them. And here the sandwich is getting ready for the tourists. Here, like buying pastries, you can buy little cheese canopies, if that's the right word. Just like you would individual cookies. That's kind of cool. So you can taste and enjoy just that, or buy a whole block of cheese. And a beautiful display of various kinds of these white olives. Didn't know there was such a thing. Look at these little dishes. I mean, there's a little snack. What the hell is that? And this is how patatas should look. Tortilla de patata. This I wanted to try, just to try it. This is the ham, the very thin sliced ham with some tomato and a very tiny baguette. Very expensive, €4 a pop. I gotta have it, several hundred markup on this, but on the other hand, it may cost them a lot to. Something embossed on the steel iron pillars outside the market. Outside the front door of the market, making an immediate left, and down Miranda Street, and then immediate right across this plaza to this church, which is the church in the convent of Puerto. This is the proud coat of arms of the family, wealthy family in 1607 that built this church and its convent. Apparently, that was the greatest thing that you could do as a wealthy family, was to build a convent. And you were really super. Now, as he humorously refers to this as a Bill and Melinda picture, kneeling before the Eucharist, what's curious is that she is missing her head, but curiously it seems to be here. But yet that seems to be more the face of a lion or a man. So, was it just lopped off? No, the hair looks the same. I think she or he must have been. Now this big brown door, and here the next big door to the right, next door period, is the entrance to the convent. Can't make it out too well. The sign says no suites until Monday because the convent's closed, but were it open, you could ring a bell here and they'd let you in, and you would announce what it was you wanted to buy in the way of dulces or sweets, and you would put your money on the little Lazy Susan, turn it, and an unseen nun would place your goodies on that other side of Lazy Susan, where it would magically, of course, appear, and you would have made your unique purchase from the cloistered nuns of this convent. Now, this old doorway just before we enter Plaza de Villa is considered to be the oldest doorway in Madrid, in apparently the oldest building in Madrid, 1480. Notice the Moorish keyhole. And up there was a prison tower. Look at the spikes in it. What did that tell somebody? Don't lean against this door, or there are worse things inside than this. Look at some of the detail. Like the trident up there. Is that just mere detail? I suspect. These little knobs. This looks like strapping that might go all the way through to hold maybe crossbars. Notice the Moorish keyhole design. And this is right at the end of Calle del Codo before you go into Plaza de Villa. Notice what they used to sell here in medieval days. With Calle Mayor to our right, this is the town hall. The typical square towers. And here are 3 coats of arms, symbols of Madrid's rulers. The Habsburg crown, apparently, and that's the center one and the left one. The castles of Castile, shield on the left, okay, so the big one's the Habsburg. And then the city symbol on the right, the bear, theoretically, no, there it is. On the left, the bear munching berries off of a tree. This is the remains then, the 14th century, just the square alone, I don't think that building is, of the center of Madrid at the time of the medieval period. And there's the tower above that door we looked at. This tower used to be a prison. This is the statue of Don Alvaro de Bazan, who ironically was the admiral of Philip II's great navy and presided over the Christian victory over the Turkish Ottomans at the Battle of Lepatano in 1571. So there's the Charles V Palace, and if I drop the map, you'll see where we're looking. And beyond that is all the rest of this, including up here the gardens. So we'll explore almost all of that. Now there are quite a number of sites, as you can see here. It's suggested both by Rick and others to limit yourself a bit depending upon your energy level. Well, I have my heavy drugs that up my potential. There also, these that are numbered in yellow are the principal not to be missed. This panel portraying the happy slaughtering of Muslims. Finally, in 1492, they conquered the last outpost, which was Granada. Not sure what this signifies, but here in Spain and principally Spain, maybe Portugal, there's a exuberance in the art, and it may be embedded in the culture of the historical slaughtering of Muslims. But what seems ironical about that is that during most of that 700 years that they controlled, number one, they absolutely flourished in the arts, all arts, compared to the rest of Europe, or most of Europe, which was mired in the Dark Ages to varying degrees. Also, they were very tolerant. For in the main, Christians and Jews were allowed to continue to function. This was allowed by the Christians, but only for a time until they got to the Reconquista, where, or not to mention the Inquisition, where it really became nasty. Just wanted to look at these deep indentations. Notice this, how it looks like it's punched into the, or pushed into that cement, whereas here it looks like it's cut out. There were at least two different ways of doing it. See, this one here also looks like it was pressed in, the design. What would be interesting to know is, was it Muslim craftsmen who did all the work on this building? This appears to be the reverse image of the other one. So take Rick's advice and go in here. We're in the vestibule. Nothing particularly outstanding about this, but interesting as we approach and climb up into the center of this palace. Looks more like a small arena for family fights. Notice the mottled columns. I don't know whether this was some, I assume it was a cement type of aggregate, but it's possible it could have been the stone that's composed of rock. I can't remember the name right now, although this looks like a definite repair. The sad irony of this is that it was paid for by an increase in taxes on the conquered Muslim population. But we'll climb these stairs, as Rick suggests. Rick conjectures that this may have been initially designed to have a dome, but it was never completed as such. It's considered to be the final and most austere Renaissance Spanish bit of architecture. It does leave a rather cold feeling. Apparently the acoustics are superb down there, but why does anyone care? The irony is that rather than a comfortable extremely inviting environment that we'll see that the Muslims prized. This seems cold, almost a monument rather than a place one would live, a palace. Here, a second, more elaborate stairway, but still rather cold and formal and simple in design. There's some repetition of symbols up here in between the first and second floor. Architecture seems to epitomize the fact that you can be powerful enough to conquer a nation. Doesn't mean you got any artistic or aesthetic class. Hitler and the communists proved over and over. The Palacios Lazaris. And there are three basic sections we'll be visiting: the royal offices, ceremonial rooms, and private quarters, mostly built in the 14th. And this is the diagram where we are. You can see where we've entered. We're in the Mexar, or Mesar, M-E-X-U-A-R. And again, compare this with what we just saw in the Charles V Palace. This just reeks of complexity and beauty, design, thought. A lot of this detail that you see here is designed to reflect literally the complexity of Allah. Notice the script there. That script apparently abounds throughout all of the areas that will go that were of the old period. And it's the source for much of the understanding of what went on here in the lifestyles, etc. And remember, everything was brightly colored. In the museum a few minutes ago where I couldn't film it, there was evidence of color, but just barely in many of the artifacts. I'm going to shoot this, and then I'm going to go in with a tight telephoto just so we can see it closely. And I'll pan up vertically when I do that, so we can appreciate the detail.
I mean, right there, another time when you get the...
It's a pretty balcony that we don't have access to, but notice also the design elements, the script, the detail, the filigree in the little windows there. So beautiful. And that's without understanding what the symbology, if any, is of the detail. And notice on this wall there are two lines of script, one there, one down below. What a lovely view just outside of this prayer room. One can imagine meditating out there. We're in a somewhat elongated room, but we can get much closer to the detail here. I'm going to just shoot the ceiling first so you can get a general impression of it. And then we're going to go up and look more closely, for example, at those rosettes, which are three-dimensional, I might add. So all of this is wood, I believe, maybe not, maybe painted. Here we're close up and personal with a niche in the wall. Here these doorways are interesting, because they have that slot in the middle. I don't know what the purpose of that was. We're in a larger room with arched areas. I just want to get this. We're in a small courtyard, but a very pretty courtyard, tall ceilings. Imagine the effort required to create such a wall. Just this wall, and it's everywhere. In the center, a small round fountain, which without the gaggle of tour group orators, we might actually hear tinkling of water. Water was very important to the Muslim. It was an expression of life itself in any of its forms. Pools, dripping sounds, fountains. Now, these grated windows, or any form of these, were designed to allow the women who did not have access to the exterior of the house, although they did have access here when there were not men, to observe who was downstairs in this area without being seen. Rick alludes to the paranoia of the men, and I think that that is true. It's, I think, the basic underlying basis for the control of women in the Muslim culture, contrary to whatever allusions to the Quran and other excuses that they use. Just passing through until we get to the big rectangular room are just administrative rooms. Think of administrative offices in any of the buildings we think of as having that function, looking this incredibly elegant, requiring this kind of effort to create. This is slightly different. The simplicity of this panel, again, outlined by the Muslim script, but everything, except for the lower part, again, was probably colored. There was red for blood, blue for heaven, green for oasis, and gold for wealth. So here we have the green. Now what the white and black symbolize, you said. Here at the bottom of this restored script is just a pretty little panel I want to focus in on. I hate using words, I don't mind using words like this, but it seems appropriate. Delightful. Here I am in a large courtyard. I'm just going to show this little alcove first. Pan up through and across the ceiling in kind of a cloistered area, if you will. And then I'll pan to show you the entire courtyard, including the reflection pool. Hard to do much with a video camera here without having these goddamn tour people jabbering everywhere. So try and get a sense of the tranquility here if you didn't have hordes of people all around us. You have three elements of water: the little fountain making the gurgling sound, the running of water down through this little chute with fish gulping for air in what might not be very good water, and then this reflection pool. The museum had a massive door in it. We'll take a close look at this one. But notice this, almost Catholic church-like, only in cement for the churches. But here we'll pan down through this massive door. And notice how this door had when it was closed, it had this little door that you could use for access. This right-hand panel contains that door. The other side would have a niche. I'm always impressed by these arches that have this scalloping of what look like little domes. And look at the detail underneath those domes and that archway formed by those two columns. Underneath it, this little niche. It's called the courtyard of the myrtles because of these two hedges of myrtle, which he says has a fragrance only when I rub the leaves, and then it's not terribly significant. Maybe under different conditions like heat it would be more aromatic. And notice that all the windows have the grill work on it. Plus that grill work up there on that balcony. I don't think it's high enough to have shielded the view from here of the women up there. Maybe it's just a continuity of design. It is pretty up there. I'm now standing in the anteroom, which I'll just show so that we can say we've seen it. I'm going to pivot the camera now so that I can go down the full length of it. Okay, now we're looking in the opposite direction, just so that we can see the size of this room. This is where you would have waited to go into the doorway or archway to the right, which was the throne room. As I look up into here, I see color, I believe, up in there other than just the blue. I think I see a red there. Now whether that's a true paint up there or some kind of deposition from age, I don't know, but I see it in several places, so I'm assuming it's legitimate. And also I can see what I think is red color coming down through there, and different colors in this area here. Also notice how this wall is deteriorating. It's cracking, and that it's cracking all the way down. Some close-up examples of the materials. This ceramic, probably little pieces of tile inlaid to make the design. This made out of stone, marble in that instance. This wood, this can often either be a solid piece of wood carved, or these can be components that are then added, like jigsaw puzzles. And then this is in the stucco form, if you will. These oftentimes pressed into the wet stucco. Here over this large piece of marble, we would have walked to encounter the Sultan, who would have sat probably up there on some kind of a throne. And it was at this point that you had better either be on great terms. Well, I'm vertically going to go up right now. This Muslim door, I have no idea. It's in the same building, or at least the collection of buildings that houses that oldest door and that tower. So this Don Alvaro de Bazan was the mastermind of the Christian victory over the Turkish Ottomans in the naval battle of Ecbatano in 1571. Ironically, he died, and then after that, that entire fleet of his was destroyed by Sir Francis Drake. And thereafter, England rose to prominence and world control, Spain into near oblivion. This statue memorializes a 1906 assassination attempt against Alfonso VIII and his bride, Victoria Eugene, as they paraded by, but instead the bomb went past them and killed 23 people. Here's a photograph. You can see the police have arrived in the bottom. Some bodies lying up there. Well, it's not something strange to the world then, is it? Look at a park art, apparently a man, it's called Curiosity, looking down into this glass part which you can't see anything in, but people rub him for luck.